Hi, and welcome back. Modular effects have taken a huge leap over the last years. The quality of algorithms has improved a lot, open source multi-effects give you endless variations for the price of one, and with the possibility to modulate them in detail, you can truly incorporate them in your sound design. This video is mostly a series of patch ideas for different kinds of effects, although you can use these patches on any effect you like. But I'll first start with a quick overview of the Chaos Devices Timiszoara, which is the module I'll use today. As always, you can use the timeline to navigate to a specific section. And if you'd like to support this video series, or you want to get access to the PDF sheets of the illustrations I use in this and many of my other videos, have a look at my Patreon. But now, let's dive right in. The Timiszoara is a simple to operate module with immense depth. Here on the sides there are two inputs with level control. Stereo outputs can be found here on the bottom, and there's a LED showing if any signal is too hot or clipping. To select effects, you press and hold this knob to access a menu with folders. You can select and open a folder, for example one with mono delays, and then scroll through the delay effects in the folder. Just press to select. The Timiszoara comes with an SD card loaded with 176 factory effects. In this video I just use a selection of those factory effects. But the code is open source and you can easily download, change and arrange effects on the SD card. Continuing with the controls, here on the top you find 4 sliders to control the selected effect. The one here on the right always controls the dry-wet mix, crossfading from full dry to full wet. And the other 3 are effect specific. For example, on the current delay, they control delay time, feedback, and the filtering of the delay. On top of each of those, there is a control voltage input for that parameter. These inputs are what makes this module so powerful, and what we'll focus on a lot in the upcoming patches. Finally, there are 2 inputs here below the effect select knob. These can be used to select an effect within the current folder. You can use the scan input with continuous voltages to scan through the folder, or use a trigger to this input to select the next effect. Remember, you can easily create a folder with favorites if you want a specific sequence or combination of effects in a folder. And in case you are wondering, there are also delays with tap tempo. In the case of mono delays, the second audio input becomes a sync input. And with stereo delays, the first CV input can be used as a clock input. Let's dive into modulating effects with a few basic ideas. Reverb is very suitable for this. In a lot of these demos, I'll use a very simple voice with just a single oscillator, filter, and VCA, as well as a sequencer tuning the oscillator and triggering an envelope modulating the filter. The voice is sent through the Timiszoara, and I always use the stereo output. Crucial for basically all modulation in modular land is to use attenuators instead of direct modulation. This way you can dial in the exact amount of modulation to create the perfect sound. For example, use an LFO modulating the earlier reflections on the reverb. Here's a trick that can bring a lot of natural depth to your sound with a lot of different effects. Use something like a slow LFO, again through an attenuator, to modulate the dry-wet mix of the effect. But at the same time, send a copy of that modulation to an inverter and have that change the volume of the sound going into the effect by modulating the VCA or filter. This way, loud sounds have little effect and softer sounds have a lot of effect. In the case of reverb, giving a natural effect. modulate the dry-wet mix in more extreme ways, you can easily kill the tail of longer sounding effects. On the modular though, you can easily solve it by creating different routings. For example, you can include a panner in your setup and have one of its stereo outputs go into the effect and the other directly to a modular or outboard mixer. Set the effect to 100% wet and then just modulate the panner with something like an LFO to decide how much of the dry signal you hear and how much is sent into the reverb. In the next patch though, I use an attack hold decay envelope with a longer attack stage to control the panner, sending more signal into the reverb on longer tones. In this case, I use another reverb and modulate the shade input for a bit more modulation. I also use a controller to play the notes and trigger the envelope manually. To show how much motion can be achieved with just modulating the reverb, let's send a steady oscillator into a filter without any modulation and feed that into the reverb. Then, two unsynced LFOs are modulating the first and third CV input, and a smooth random voltage through an attenuator is modulating the second input. This works on simple reverbs, but has even more effect on creative reverb algorithms. Delay is another classic effect that offers a lot more possibilities when modulation is added. Let's use it to create some more complex patches as well. Starting simple though, here is our simple voice again. In this example, a mono delay is used. An attenuated LFO is used to modulate the delay time, and another looping envelope used as a unipolar LFO is modulating the feedback. But delays are very suitable for interesting time-based modulation. You can use the sequencer's clock and clock divider to create interesting divisions. In this patch, a slow division is used as a modulation source and sent through an attenuator to modulate the time. You can use the time control on the delay and the attenuator to create two interesting values that both sound good. For more dynamics, a faster division is used to trigger a kick, as well as an envelope. The envelope is inverted and sent to modulate the dry-wet mix to create a crude sidechaining effect. Here, you see the same basic setup with a clock divider triggering a kick and envelope, creating sidechaining. This time, however, a division from the clock divider is used to clock a dual CV sequencer at a slower speed. The mono delay is replaced with a stereo multi-tap delay, and the two CV sequencers are used to create individual delayed time patterns for the left and right signal. remember, you can easily change the placement of effect modules within a modular. If you have been watching my channel, you know I'm a huge fan of patching an effect like a delay directly behind a simple oscillator to create complex waveforms. Here is just that setup with a sequencer on the oscillator to show how much sound you can get out of this, using one of the more experimental delays on the Timiszoara, with some built-in random modulation. Of course, you can expand that patch into a voice by sending the stereo outputs to filters, for example. For added motion, a clock divider is used and two divisions are sent to a mixer to modulate the time, creating an interesting modulation pattern. The clock is used on an envelope modulating both filters, and an LFO through an attenuator is used to modulate the dry-wet mix for added depth. Like delays, distortion and overdrive type effects are very suitable for rhythmic and tempo sync modulation, as well as deep and dark modulated drones. Here's an example with a steady tone through an unmodulated filter. The algorithm used in this case is called bloodshed and has the parameters gain, grid and tune. These are all modulated, one with an LFO through an attenuator, one with a smooth random voltage through an attenuator, and one with a random sample and hold signal. You guessed it, through an attenuator. A bit into the demo, I open an attenuverter, allowing a looping envelope to pull down the frequency of the oscillator periodically. For the next patch, we bring back the simple voice with sequencer and feed that into another distortion algorithm kindly called Bloodbath. This one has parameters called feedback, dirt and dirt rate. Again, all three are modulated through attenuators, but only unsynced sine wave LFOs with different speeds are used. For interesting rhythmic and tempo sync modulation, just modulate any effect with modules that can be triggered or synced, like envelopes with different settings or LFOs with reset or sync inputs. In this setup, I used 3 envelopes triggered by different divisions of a clock divider based on a master clock. Of course, you can also use a trigger sequencer and program custom patterns. As I mentioned in the beginning, the open source multi-effect nature of this module is a huge advantage and a lot of fun. Here are a few more patches with effects I enjoyed. For example, I enjoyed exploring the glitch folder with loads of algorithms that can easily get out of hand in a good way. Here I set one up with a sample player playing a drum loop triggered by a division of a clock. A faster division is triggering a new sample and hold value on an LFO, and that signal is used to occasionally turn on the glitch effect. On top of that, a sine wave LFO is modulating the buffer or glitch speed, and a smooth random voltage is modulating the dry-wet mix, both attenuated of course. Here is the same setup again, but the basic melodic voice is brought back and sent through a granular effect. In this case, the modulators are changing the latch, split frequency of the grains, and dry-wet mix. One more example with a granular effect called soft, as I quite like this one. This time the rate is modulated with an LFO and the low frequencies with a smooth random voltage. And I manually occasionally plug in the jack to the sequencer to pick up only a few notes of the sequence. And here's a quick example of a drum loop through a resonator, modulated with an LFO and looping envelope. I want to keep my videos somewhat compact, so these patches are just a starting point with some of the available effects. There are a lot more effects available, modulation effects like flangers and choruses, as well as ring modulators and filters, but also things like resonators. If you'd like to dive deeper in modular patch ideas, you can browse through my videos in any of these playlists. Also, smash that like, subscribe and bell button if you want to see more modular content from me. But that's it for now. Thanks for watching and see you next time.